Of course, today we recognize the 24-year anniversary of those horrible attacks on the Trade Center in New York City, and we remember those we lost on today's 9/11 2025. I was born in 1998, so I was alive, but don't remember a lot about the terrible tragedy. But of course, it is one of the most historic days in the history, sadly, of our country. So I did want to acknowledge that today, before we got into week two of the 2025 NFL season, which in week one, I did go 9-7 in the money line. I did go 3 for 5 in best bets. Obviously, money line was okay. We'll take it for week one. Typically, I am around 500 in the money line until about week four. Again, I've been under 500 through week three before. Obviously, don't want to be, but sometimes here early in the season, we get these upsets because the bad teams don't know they're bad yet. And in best bets, 3 for 5 is 60%. If Buffalo would have won by more than a point, we would have been 4 for 5, which could have been 80%. Missing Kansas City was a miss. At some points, it kind of felt like they had a chance to come back and potentially cover. Just some bad plays defensively went the other way. And there's a lot of games this week where either both teams are 0-1 or a team is 1-0 versus another team that's 0-1. And both teams really need a victory because that 1-0 team was a surprise and that 0-1 team is a surprise. It's a very interesting slate this week, as I said off the top, with a lot of great games. And so let's get right into it. We're kicking off with a big game in the NFC, in my opinion. Thursday Night Football, the Washington Commanders, who made the NFC Championship game last year, against a team that is favorited to potentially make the Super Bowl this year in the Green Bay Packers. Packers are at home. They are favored by 3.5. These are, by most experts, two of the top five teams in the NFC. And as I said in my debate show with Josh Unger, Championship Rings, which does air on the Championship Rings YouTube channel every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, we are also in collaboration with Voltage Live on that show. I said if the Green Bay Packers want to have a chance at the number one seed in the NFC, just based off their schedule and based off the math, they have to win this game. And the Commanders' offensive line did okay. They didn't do great against the New York Giants' defensive line, which was the strength of the Giants team. They just shut down the Giants' offense mostly, but their offense wasn't anything special last Sunday against the Giants. I always think short week, especially when they're even teams, favors the home team. I said it going into the year. One of the reasons why I love the Packers so much is because they had most of their tough games at home. This was one of those tough games that's going to be taking place at home. I like Green Bay. I'm not going to bet it though. Then, you guys know I rarely do this, even though I'm doing it twice this week in week two. Again, I always think week two is the weird week, or even more than week one sometimes. We get some upsets. So I rarely do this where I take the team plus the points to cover, but then I pick the other team in the money line. And you guys know when it comes to picking games, I generally take the better quarterback. If it's really close, like a Green Bay Washington game, I'll take the better roster, which is why I'll take Green Bay also because they're at home. In the Browns Ravens game, there's obviously a significant difference in quarterback play between Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson. Both of these teams lost in brutal fashion. The Ravens obviously blowing the lead. The Browns with a missed kick, a missed extra point, some dropped passes, some passes that went through the hands of receivers right into the hands of the Cincinnati Bengals. In my opinion, I get it. The Ravens are angry after the way they lost to Buffalo. They could come out and they could steamboat the Cleveland Browns. But historically in this rivalry, especially in the Kevin Stefanski era, the Browns have played the Ravens tough. I think Joe Flacco coming back into Baltimore is a little bit of an underrated storyline. Again, the Browns don't know they're bad yet. I think a week two line of 11 and a half is ridiculous. Now, is there going to be a blowout this weekend? Yes, it's going to happen somewhere. I don't know where that's going to be. There's obviously a couple of scenarios, but I think 11 and a half for a division rivalry game in week two is way too many points. Give me the Browns plus 11 and a half in my best bets, though I like the Ravens to win the game outright. Then we go to the DK Metcalf revenge game in Pittsburgh, and I'm telling you guys, this game screams take the Steelers -3. But man, I don't know. They were on such a high last week against the Jets. They put up 34 points. The Seahawks had a bad loss at home against San Francisco where they had the opportunity to win the game. If Seattle goes down 0-2, some people have the Seahawks winning the NFC West this year, which again I thought was absolutely crazy. If they start 0-2, there's no way they can do it. Again, I think Seattle is probably the more desperate team here, but DK Metcalf knows the Seahawks defense, even though they know DK Metcalf. I don't know, even though they do have Tariq Woolen and they do have Devin Witherspoon. They're not very good physical, great corners that can go up contested catch with DK Metcalf. And Christian McCaffrey had a field day against that Seahawks run defense last week. Could Jalen Warren get going in that run game enough? And I think coming off a physical game, because when you play the Niners, you're always playing a physical football team. The Steelers are another physical football team. Also going west to east coast, which the Seahawks have done better than any other team over the last decade, especially during the Pete Carroll era. But playing these two physical, smash mouth, ground and pound football teams back to back, I think is a wear and tear on Seattle. Again, this would be my sixth best bet on the board. I want to do it. I just don't trust Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers yet, but I'll take them in the money line here. Then, a game with two 1-0 teams, which both of them had surprising results, right? The Jacksonville Jaguars absolutely blowing out the Carolina Panthers. The Cincinnati Bengals only giving up 16 points and winning a football game in Cleveland against the Browns. Now here, the Bengals are favored by 3.5. And I think the Bengals know it's important to get off to a hot start. Al Golden, the new defensive coordinator, has emphasized turnovers. And listen, the Bengals start off 2-0 the way they should on this schedule, then they're in good shape. I said going into the year, I know they've got off to two slow starts, but I looked at the first two games. I said at Cleveland and versus Jacksonville, at worst, they should walk away 1-1, and they should probably be 2-0. And I'm sticking to that. I think they are going to be 2-0 to start the year. I have them winning this game. To me, again, I'm interested to see if the Panthers are just that bad. If Trevor Lawrence truly does have a resurgence with Liam Cohen now as his head coach. The Jaguars trade away Tank Bigsby this week to the Philadelphia Eagles. Does that mean Travis Etienne, who had, over 120 yards against the Panthers, does that mean he's officially back? And obviously, Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter played only 6 defensive snaps against a Panthers team with the weapons that we don't really know a ton of in week one. The Bengals obviously have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Jogan Bosch and Mike Gesicki and now Noah Fant, Chase Brown. The Jaguars said it's going to be matchup dependent whether Travis Hunter plays more offense or defense. I think this week you're going to see him on defense a lot more than offense. Again, I thought coming into the week he was a better corner than receiver. What do I know? I have no idea if this is going to work or not. Um, but I think there's a chance he could shadow Jamar Chase in this game. Next game, Sneaky, interesting game here. We have the 1-0 Rams against the 0-1 Titans, who only gave up 20 points in Denver, but they only scored 12 points themselves. They had almost as many penalty yards they did offensive yards. And Cam Ward now going against Jared Verse and Brandon Fisk and that Rams defensive line. A defensive line that terrorized CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans in week one. I think it's going to be a long day for Cam Ward and the Titans. Now, the Rams offense did not look that great either. And maybe the Titans defense this year, who created a lot of turnovers, they got a lot of good pressure on Bo Nix. Maybe they're just a really good defense. Maybe this is another low scoring 14 to 10, 17-14 type affair, and the Tennessee Titans keep it close. That's the only way they're going to keep it close because if the Rams offense gets going, if the Tennessee Titans don't get a pass rush, this could be one of those blowouts of the week. Rams are favored by 5.5. Again, I could see this game going two different ways. I just don't know, right? Like, I got to watch the Rams offense more. I got to see if Matthew Stafford is truly healthy. I got to watch Cam Ward and the Titans and see, if week one was just an anomaly, the way week one was for Jaden Daniels last week, or excuse me, last year against the Bucks, and see if Cam Ward really does pop off. So to me, this is a stay away game, but I'll take the Rams in the money line. Then this one started at 7, so it's come down to 6.5. Buffalo favored against the New York Jets. And again, are we overreacting to Justin Fields, or is he going to have a Jared Goff type progression that Jared Goff had with the Lions when Aaron Glenn was there as their defensive coordinator, which is a guy who was just dumped in a trade, goes to the Lions, and all of a sudden for 4 seasons becomes their franchise quarterback. The Jets offense looked better in one game with Justin Fields than it did in 17 games with Aaron Rodgers last year. Now, did it just shock the Steelers? Did Justin Fields know about the Steelers defense because he was there last year and all of a sudden he's going to go back to the quarterback he was in Chicago and even in preseason this year where they said he couldn't throw the football? I have no idea. And Buffalo, again, they're probably exhausted, right? They spent a lot of energy last week against the Ravens, having to come back. Their defense did give up 40 points. Is their defense not as good as a year ago? Is it leaking oil right now? Is this Buffalo offense truly a machine, or is Aaron Glenn with that Jets secondary, which is better objectively than Baltimore's? Are they going to get physical? Are they going to be able to get a pass rush? Are they going to be able to slow down Buffalo? And typically, we know these two teams play very close games. I understand why the money is coming in on the Jets because I was thinking about taking this game. Jets plus 6.5. Again, I think they could keep it close. I'm going to pick Buffalo to win. It would not shock me if the Jets flat out upright upset Buffalo. Again, early in the year, I'm just a little skittish. I won't pull the trigger. Now, this is a game that I don't know if a lot of people are going to watch in the 1 o'clock window because there's a lot of games in the 1 o'clock window, folks, this week. There are 9 games in the 1 o'clock window this week. This is one of them. Patriots at the Dolphins, who Miami at home is favored by 1.5. And you guys know my rule, and I'm going to talk about this coming up next with a team like the Lions as well. When you get embarrassed in week one, the way the Miami Dolphins did, generally you bet them the next week, right? Teams do not want to get embarrassed. They come out, they play well. You don't typically get embarrassed in back to back weeks in the NFL unless you've already quit, which is the problem with the Miami Dolphins because I don't know what they have, right? I don't know if the talk in the media and everybody's saying, oh my God, the Dolphins are the worst team of all time, and they quit on Mike McDaniel, and there's already defensive players complaining about Mike McDaniel. Like, I thought the Dolphins had a chance to be the worst team in the AFC this year. I picked them as the second worst team in the conference, right behind the Cleveland Browns. I think they're a disaster. I think this is the last year of the Mike McDaniel Tua era. I think the head coach, general manager, quarterback is all gone at the end of this year. But New England typically struggles in Miami, and Miami under McDaniel has had New England's number, Belichick or no Belichick. So I'm gonna look like an idiot here. I'm gonna take the Dolphins at home. Mike Vrabel and the Patriots did not play well in week one. Do they bounce back against a Raiders team? Or the Raiders is better than maybe even I thought, even though I had them as a playoff team. And New England is just not going to take that year two jump with Drake May that we all thought. Those questions start to get answered on Sunday. Again, stay away game for me. I'll take the Dolphins in the money line. Now, if the Bears would have won on Monday night against the Vikings, I would have hammered the Lions minus 5.5 here because I still think the Lions are a good football team. I think they have a good roster. I am worried, as I talked about on Tuesday's show, about the interior of their offensive line. The issue for me here now is obviously it's Ben Johnson returning to Detroit with the Bears. But the way the Bears lost that game after they were up 16-7 in total control of that Monday night game until the fourth quarter, they're desperate, right? They don't want to start 0-2. The Lions don't want to start 0-2 after they got whooped by the Packers and they got physically whooped up front. The Bears did on the defensive side in the fourth quarter. I mean, Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones were running the football down the throat of Dennis Allen's defense. Kelvin Shepard, he blitzed a lot against Jordan Love in week one. I suspect he's going to do the same against Caleb Williams in week two. I don't want the Bears to start 0-2 because that could be a bad derailing sign, especially because they have the Cowboys in week three. Big standalone 425 game on Fox. Both these teams need this game. But I think the Lions need it more because you look at their schedule and they have Baltimore coming up next week on the horizon. And wouldn't that be something? I'll just throw it out there. If both the Lions and Ravens are 0-2 going into that game, that would be marquee popcorn to see which team would fall to 0-3 in that scenario. I think both teams will be 1-1 in that scenario, though. Again, I'm not going to bet the game. I think these are two very close games. Obviously, the Lions know Ben Johnson, but Ben Johnson knows the Lions. He knows that personnel. I think he's going to come up with tricks out of the bag. I think the Bears are going to play inspired. I think they're going to play hard for their new head coach. It would not shock me if the Bears pulled the upset. It wouldn't shock me if Detroit blew them out. It wouldn't shock me if this was a close game down to the wire, the Lions win. I don't know what this scenario is going to be. To me, it's a stay away bet at this point because of the Bears also being 0-1, but I'll take the Lions in the money line. Next game, Giants at Cowboys. Again, the Giants, they scored 6 points. We know they have not scored a touchdown now in three straight openers. First time since the 1940 to 1942 Detroit Lions. But both these teams played in division games in week one, very similar to the NFC North. Both these teams, very similar to the Bears and Lions, are 0-1. The Giants, we know they have the toughest schedule in football. Everybody had them, winning two free games this season because of it. The biggest question now about the Giants is, are we going to see Jackson Dart soon? I do think they play better, but again, the Cowboys have the Bears next week in week three. The Giants have the Chiefs as well. So these are two desperate teams. I think Dallas has higher expectations, though not that much higher, I would say, even without Micah Parsons, than the Giants do. The Cowboys typically play the Giants really well, especially since Eli Manning retired. It feels like the Giants can't beat the Cowboys. I'm very interested to see how Dallas's offensive line holds up against the Giants' defensive line. If again, that Giants' defensive line, which is the strength of their team, can finally get some pressure the way they did not on Jaden Daniels in week one. But I'll take Dallas in the money line. Now, originally, my bet was going to be San Francisco minus 6.5, hammer them against the New Orleans Saints. But George Kittle got hurt in week one against the Seahawks. Brock Purdy is dealing with a shoulder injury, and he is very uncertain to play. We could get Mac Jones against Spencer Rattler. Yeah, I think both fan bases are fired up for this game. And again, if Purdy plays, if you want to lock in a separate, game, just Niners -4.5 and wait it out to see if Purdy's going to play, you can do that because if Purdy plays, I think the Niners cover. If Mac Jones plays, this is a stay away game, and I don't care who wins. The Niners are already getting banged up already with injuries. McCaffrey was even questionable going into the game week 1 against Seattle. It's why I didn't trust San Francisco going into the year. Did Spencer Rattler look okay week 1 in Kellen Moore's system? Yes, he did. But again, it's week 1. The Saints don't know they're bad yet. They'll play hard. Against Mac Jones, they have a chance to win, I guess. I'm taking the Cardinals in my best bets. It's only the second best bet on the board here, folks, this week so far. So we got more to come. But I like Arizona -6.5. I did not like what I saw out of the Panthers. Bryce Young looked like the quarterback he looked a year ago. Now, Arizona, they did barely cover. It was 6.5 again. They did it against the Saints on the road. This is their home opener. J.C. Horn made a spectacular one-handed interception against the Jaguars last week, which could have been a touchdown to Travis Hunter. But outside of that, I mean, is J.C. Horn going to be able to cover Marvin Harrison all game long? Trey McBride in the middle at tight end, I think he's going to be able to eat in this game. We saw what Travis Etienne did in the run game. I think James Conner, who scored a touchdown in week 1 against the Saints, could have a very similar game here against Carolina. Again, I'm high on the Cardinals this year. I have them finishing just a niche behind the Rams, and I think if Matthew Stafford and the Rams deal with injuries, Arizona could steal this division from them. I think they cover the 6.5. Then we have the Broncos at the Colts, which is all of a sudden a fascinating game because both these teams are 1-0, and Denver may be 1-0, but Bo Nix did not play well against the Tennessee Titans. And the Colts are 1-0, and Daniel Jones played the best game of his career against a Dolphins team who may or may not have quit. And we're going to find out, obviously, how good Daniel Jones is. I do think Vance Joseph, the Broncos defensive coordinator, is going to send a ton of pressure at Daniel Jones and that Colts offensive line, seeing if they are truly back as a unit. I've said it all offseason about the Colts. I'm not sure about the quarterback. Daniel Jones did make the playoffs in 2022 under Brian Dable with the New York Giants. But I like their roster, I like the general manager, and I like the head coach in Shane Steichen. I said all offseason, I don't know about this hype about the Denver Broncos. I think they beat up on bad teams last year. I think teams are going to get film on Bo Nix. And I think there is a chance that Bo Nix is a sophomore slump. This is a really interesting game to me. I'm going to go with the upset here. Just like Seattle last week, right? Okay, it didn't work out. I think this is the Colts at home. I think they play well. I think their offensive line gets after Denver, who I did not like the way they play. We know Sean Payton's teams typically get better as the season goes on. He's very Belichick in that regard, where he'll lose some games he should not lose early, but he'll win games he should not win later in the year. I like Indianapolis here in an upset. I'm not going to bet it. Again, I'm being a little bit of a coward here because I don't even trust my own money line pick, but I like the Colts. And the line, by the way, is Denver -2.5. Then we get to the Super Bowl rematch. Of course, I'm taking my Eagles to win the game, to cover the 1.5 against the Kansas City Chiefs. It's pretty wild that this is the first time in the Patrick Mahomes era the Chiefs are home underdogs. Do I think that's bulletin board material? Absolutely, yes, I do. Am I nervous about that as an Eagles fan? Yes. Am I nervous the Chiefs are 0-1? Yes. But the big news that came out on Tuesday was that Jalen Carter essentially served his 1 game suspension by being ejected before a snap was even taking place in week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys. Again, whether there's going to be some internal discipline from the Eagles, we'll see. There is a possibility that he is going to be on the bench to start this game, week 2 against the Kansas City Chiefs. But I think this Eagles team feels like they've been disrespected all offseason. Nobody has talked about their chance of repeating. It's been about could the Bills get back? What about the Packers? What about the Ravens? What about the Chiefs getting back to the Super Bowl? Obviously. I don't think many people are talking about the Eagles. Now, Steve Spagnuolo is going to go into that defensive meeting and say, boys, just like the Dallas Cowboys did, we have to take A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith away. We have to force them to run the ball with Saquon Barkley. We have to force A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith to get frustrated. I think the Eagles are going to try to target A.J. Brown at least very early in this game. But I do think there was times in that game where AJ was just double teamed and Jalen Hurts was taking what the defense was giving him, which was Dallas Goedert over the middle and Saquon Barkley underneath. And I think that's the adjustment teams have made to the Eagles this season is they're going to bracket AJ Brown and they're going to force my team, like the Kansas City Chiefs have done the last few years, to nickel and dime themselves down the field and stack the box with Saquon Barkley and don't let my team get explosive plays. I do not think it's going to be 40-22 or 40-6. I think that my Eagles defensive line is going to get a real test against Josh Simmons on that left side of the Chiefs offensive line. Jackson on, Moore and Ajoro, are in there basically to replace Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat. We'll see if Nolan Smith can get more pressure off the edge the way he did in the Super Bowl from that left defensive end spot. I think this is a very close game. I think it's low scoring, like 24-20, the way I kind of thought the Super Bowl was going to go, with my Eagles edging it out. Then, Sunday Night Football. I said already there's going to be 2 times this week where I take a team to win, but I take the other team plus the points. I'm taking the Vikings to win. But this may be a weird bet to you, and I should never bet the Falcons because I don't trust the Falcons. But the Falcons and Vikings always play close games that come down to the wire. This feels like a 3-point game, and 4.5 points feels like too much. I'm very interested to see Michael Penix and JJ McCarthy in primetime stand alone. I want to watch both of them. I thought both of them had flashes in week 1. I need to see more out of these quarterbacks that were taken, I believe, a pick before each other. Number 8 and number 9. I could be wrong. Could be 8 and 10 for JJ. In that 2024 NFL draft. It's a weird Sunday night game between 2 teams that I don't think are playoff teams, but they're fascinating early in the season. This would not be a week 12 Sunday night game, but it will be a week 2 Sunday night game. Again, if the line was 3, it would be stay away, but I think 4.5 for the Falcons and Vikings is too much. Give me Atlanta plus 4.5. And then we have a Monday night doubleheader, which is not going to take place at the same time this time. They're going to do one game at 7 and one game at 10 Eastern, the way they used to do it back in the day. Bucks at Texans. I know the Texans are at home, but I think the wrong team is favored here. Texans are favored by 2.5. I don't understand that. I'm taking Tampa plus 2.5. Sorry to my cousin Derek, who is a Texans fan, but he even told me, you watch this Texans offensive line against the Rams. They got destroyed. And the Bucks have just as good of a defensive line, obviously led by Villa. And Todd Bowles a very aggressive defensive coordinator. And I think they're going to get after C.J. Stroud in this pass rush of the Texans. And I don't think the Texans are going to be able to hold up. Now, Baker Mayfield and the Bucks struggled offensively in that first half against Atlanta. They turned it on in the second half. Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver out of Ohio State, already looks like a Pro Bowl wide receiver and has a chance to win Rookie of the Year even in week 1. Looks like he's going to be a 10-year pro already. The Bucks are just a very good offense. And the Texans defense, they have pieces obviously led by Will Anderson, Derek Stingley, that I think they could keep this game close. But again, I think the Bucks defensive line is the difference. I'm getting points with, I think Baker Mayfield and CJ Stroud are on the same level right now as a quarterback. I like Tampa's offense and defense just a tiny bit more than Houston's. I think these are two very similar teams out of the South Division who have good quarterbacks. They have good teams. They're just not Super Bowl contender teams. I think they're very similar. I think Tampa's just a notch better. And then the Chargers favored by 3 Monday night against the Las Vegas Raiders. This to me, I wanted to take the Chargers -3 because I think Jim Harbaugh with extra day to prepare is going to be tough. But they are coming back from Brazil. And we know the Packers won last year when they came back from Brazil, but my Eagles lost to Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons, and their offense did not look very good in week 2 in that game last year. Could be something wonky here. Jim Harbaugh has had the number of Pete Carroll. We know even going back to their days of Stanford versus USC in college football. It's a shame this game's going to start at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern because this is going to be a fascinating game that I don't know many people on the East Coast are going to be able to see the aftermath of. They're going to have to watch highlights in the morning. But this is a big test for my Raiders. I shouldn't say my Raiders, for the Raiders to see if they could be a playoff team. Because if they start 2-0, then everybody is going to be on the Las Vegas Raider bandwagon. They have a chance for an upset. This is going to be a close divisional game. But in my opinion, I'll take the Chargers because I get the better quarterback. And in my opinion, at least right now, I get the better head coach. So, to recap, in the money line, I have Packers over Commanders, Baltimore over Cleveland, Pittsburgh over Seattle, Cincinnati over Jacksonville, the Rams over Tennessee, Buffalo over the Jets, Miami over New England, Detroit over Chicago, Dallas over the Giants, San Francisco over New Orleans, Arizona over Carolina, Indy over Denver, Philly over Kansas City, Minnesota over Atlanta, Tampa over Houston, and the Los Angeles Chargers over Las Vegas. My 5 best bets for week 2 of the 2025 NFL season are I don't like them to win, but I like the Cleveland Browns to cover the 11.5. It's just too many points in week 2 for a division rivalry game at Baltimore. I like Arizona to cover the 6.5 against the Carolina Panthers. I like my Eagles to cover the 1.5 in a Super Bowl rematch against the Kansas City Chiefs. I like the Atlanta Falcons. Not to win, but I think 4.5 in a game between the Falcons and Vikings. Two teams that always play 3-point games. I like Atlanta plus 4.5. And then I like Tampa plus 2.5. I think they're the better team going into Houston. I think this line should be flipped. So while last week I took all 5 favorites, this week in week 2, the dogs are barking. Roo, roo, roo. I have 3 underdogs in my best bets. And that'll conclude this edition of Brandon's World. As always, we're in collaboration with Voltage Live. My social media links are in the description below. We'll talk all things week 2 as well as any college football big things happening on Tuesday's show. Enjoy the weekend of sports and peace. Like that clip from the Brandon's World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brandon's World podcast right here on YouTube.